After its original release in 2008, Dead Space was heralded as a fantastic game by critics and survival horror game fans alike, and a game that would properly iterate on Resident Evil 4's new action-oriented survival horror with a focus on shooting enemy limbs and small confined areas within the USG Ishimura, a planet-cracking spaceship. And yet, after two fantastic games, Dead Space 3 was released in 2013 to lackluster reviews and essentially killed the series. But 10 long years later, Dead Space is finally seeing life once again through a remake. But what type of remake will this be? Is it going to pretty much be a one-for-one remake a la Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy? Or are we looking at something that will completely reinvent the game a la Resident Evil 2? Well, here is everything we know so far about the Dead Space remake, a la me. It was announced back on July 1st, 2021 that Dead Space was undergoing a remake, probably thanks in part to the success of Capcom's RE2 and RE3 remakes, as well as EA's very own Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The game is being developed by Motive Studios and published by EA, while the announcement trailer that would later release that month was gamers' first chance to see Dead Space in the works. The trailer actually did more than that. According to creative director Roman Campos Oriola, the trailer served as an atmospheric benchmark for the team and something they could use as a reference to try and hit for the entire game. In order to create its tense atmosphere with updated visuals, EA is utilizing their very own Frostbite engine. Frostbite engine was used on various EA Star Wars games, including Star Wars Squadrons, also developed by Motive Studios, and Star Wars Battlefront 2. Other games to use the engine include Anthem, FIFA 23, and Battlefield 2042. So far, Motive Studios has only co-developed on Star Wars Battlefront 2 and developed Star Wars Squadrons, so it will definitely be interesting to see how the studio handles Dead Space. While the graphics of the game are getting a major overhaul, another noticeable change is in the faces of the various characters, from Nicole getting far more detail to Isaac looking younger, less gruff, and, well, totally different. This has actually been a slow evolution though from Dead Space 1. In the first game, there was a different face model for Isaac, then in Dead Spaces 2 and 3, that face model was combined with elements of Isaac's voice actor, Gunnar Wright, and now for the remake, the face model is fully him. The gameplay in Dead Space remains fairly faithful to the original game. That means that it's still a survival horror game with over-the-shoulder combat. You'll collect various weapons that each have unique strengths and weaknesses for taking out the enemy necromorphs, and you'll still be able to upgrade these weapons as you progress through the game. Additionally, the map is mostly faithful to the original game, with chapters and progression being similar. However, while the overall map is similar, it's also been overhauled. You'll no longer be locked off from accessing former areas of the game and map once heading into a new chapter. Instead, you'll now be able to backtrack whenever you want and find new routes. Part of what this means is that instead of taking a tram from one section of the ship to another, like in the original Dead Space, brand new areas were added to the game with Isaac needing to physically traverse to get from the end of a chapter to the starting point of the next one. And this isn't always going to be inside of the ship. Sometimes this will result in Isaac taking a spacewalk on the hull of the Ishimura to get around to the start of a new section. And speaking of the spacewalk, while Dead Space 1 has Isaac clinging to the sides of the ship and then propelling off to a destination you choose, the remake has altered the zero gravity system to reflect how the mechanic worked in Dead Spaces 2 and 3, and changed up these sections from the original game to better fit the ability to move around wherever you want. That said, while Isaac doesn't take a tram to the start of a new section, trams weren't entirely removed. Instead, once reaching a new section, activate the tram there and quickly return to previously unlocked tram stations, so there will still be an element of fast travel. Additionally, while some of the rooms may seem similar to what players saw in the original game, the locations of various objects and enemies have moved around. Whether that be a vent with a necromorph in it waiting to jump out at you, certain hallways and doorways, or even the location of various pickups like health ammo and guns. In fact, early on in the game, a character who originally gives Isaac a kinesis model for grappling various objects now instead gives him a pulse rifle, a terrible gun for cutting off limbs, but what you gonna do? You'll also find doors and lockers with a number on them and can't open them until you get that level of security clearance. As far as we can tell, gaining new levels seems to be story related, so perhaps this will be an added incentive for backtracking. According to Campos Oriola, in creating the remake, the team referenced assets from the original game they had full access to, as opposed to just what would come out in the final release, and were able to find various corridors created in different ways that were likely changed at the time due to technical constraints, and very well could be something this new team are restoring and bringing to life for the remake. Yet another new element to the Dead Space remake are added side quests. In the preview we were able to play, Chapter 2 included a new side quest to try and find Nicole, which the team has tried to make sure the player knows and feels is a major reason Isaac is on the mission in the first place. This side quest led to several new hologram recordings of Nicole. Another aspect worth bringing up, I'm sure many Dead Space fans will be dreading, is microtransactions. While Dead Space 1 and 2 were free of these, they were extremely prevalent in Dead Space 3 and considered by many to be a major detriment to the game as a whole, to the point where the gameplay suffered thanks to them. And fortunately, at least as of right now, there are no microtransactions in the Dead Space remake, so yes, you can breathe in a sigh of relief, I think.
Thank God.
While the story of Dead Space remains relatively intact for Dead Space Remake, Isaac's girlfriend Nicole is aboard the USG Ishimura on a mining expedition when things go horribly wrong, and Isaac, along with the small crew, pick up the distress signal and attempt to repair the ship and rescue any survivors, along with Isaac's girlfriend, before realizing the ship is infested with horrifying necromorphs. There are definitely changes. However, to what extent, we still aren't sure. Dialogue in the game and various audio logs Isaac will be able to find to help fill in the backstory of what happened aboard the ship to lead to its disaster have been completely rewritten. Whether this is just flavor to try and make the dialogue more realistic and or more interesting, or something that will lead to major plot changes is something that we'll have to wait and see.
Christ, still can't believe the chief is gone. It's all fallen apart since the captain died.
The Dead Space remake will keep the original score from the first game, written by Jason Graves, while also adding on new music composed by Trevor Gurix. Meanwhile, Isaac Clarke will once again be voice acted by Gunnar Wright, and while he was a silent protagonist in Dead Space 1, the remake will instead more closely resemble Dead Spaces 2 and 3, where Isaac was far more vocal. In part, this is to fix the issue of Isaac being a silent protagonist, despite being extremely qualified to deal with engineering failures of a massive ship, considering he's the engineer assigned to help with this situation.
Fix the centrifuge, get the fuel running, then do a full restart. But you'll need to stabilize our orbit from there.
Standing by.
While Isaac will be more talkative, that doesn't mean he's going to be constantly yammering away, more so that he'll pitch advice when spoken to and offer potential solutions. The Dead Space remake is set to release on January 27, 2023 to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X/S, and PC. Are you going to be picking up the Dead Space remake? And if so, what new features has you the most excited? Let us know in the comments below and join the Church of Unitology today. Make us whole again.